All right, we back. Previously on Dragon Ball Z, we got all of the sodium salicylate mixed up very nice with the iron oxide quickly in the um, old blender. Uh, Way faster than ball mill when you're making propellants, and also in my finding, the performance is essentially the same, which is surprising. You think that the ball mill would be a little bit higher performance because uh, you're doing it for longer, with milling media actually crushing up against each other and really getting things mixed together well. But it has been found that when you use the blender, it actually results in uh, a uh, a blend of the catalyst and the fuel that is, it behaves right on par with if it's ball milled, as far as the performance of the propellant, which is very interesting. And you know, I'm cool with that because, you know, saving time, a little extra time, is not something that we're going to be opposed to. Anyway, um, it's you know, feels like the surface of Venus out here right now. It's very hot, so I got this fan here to kind of help keep me a little bit on the cooler side. So that's what we got going on there. We grabbed that. We still got the 432 on the calculator um, from determining the amount of potassium perchlorate we need. As you recall, we went with 435 grams, and that's you know, a very small amount extra. Like that's like 0.5% extra because, you know, 3 is like 0.5% of 600, so that's not going to be a big deal. No problem there. Anyway, we are at the point where we can go ahead and add our potassium perchlorate. So let's go ahead and indulge in that activity. Firstly, same as before, I'm going to take the toothbrush to this lid and I'm going to clean out the potassium perchlorate that has decided to reside there following the milling in the blender. So we're going to get that out of there. Alright, looks like that's done. Next up, we got the main part of the potassium perchlorate. Alright, it's all in there. I clean the sides again with this brush. Pretty simple, nothing too special there. Just take a moment. Make sure we do a nice job. You know, another thing is evidently, you know, maybe about 0.5 gram or so of oxidizer is going to be left that you don't completely clean out, which brings it closer to 432. But yeah, whether an extra 3 grams or 2.5 grams or 4 grams or whatever the extra amount of oxidizer is, as long as it's like within 5 grams and you're making more than a 500 gram batch in total, it's not going to be the end of the world. But if you want to be really, really accurate and really make sure that you're being, you know, extremely consistent and really following your recipe, then yeah, it's totally cool to just make sure that you're super accurate all the time. That's not a problem. But anyway, I'm really making sure that I get all of the chemicals cleaned out of this blender to ensure that we are fully ready to move forward. So that's that, very cool. And now comes the part where we deal with the mineral oil. So let's go ahead and do that. Put this over here. What else do I need? This dripper. Turn on the scale, and we're gonna go 2% mineral oil. So I got some mineral oil here that we're going to go ahead and grab a bit of. So we're gonna need 12 grams, and this little cup, I already tared it earlier. I tested to make sure my scale was accurate and we didn't have to change the batteries. So what we have right in here already is 3 grams. So if we need 12, if we put this here, it's zeroed out, tared, we'll need 9 more of the mineral oil in order for it to be a total of 12 grams. So we're going to get 9 of the mineral oil here. Sweet, that's 9 grams. So let's go ahead and put the lid back on of our jar of mineral oil. So this is just a good old mineral oil that you can get at the pharmacy or any standard store. So yeah, what's great about it is we don't need to be farting around with some silly hot plate. We don't need like some hot water lying around that we have a jar of paint thinner sitting in. We don't have to be doing any of that silliness. And that's great. That's wonderful. But anyway, if you look over here, this is our mineral oil for this batch of Whistle Mix. And because we're going 2 parts, and we're making a 600 gram batch, that is 12 grams of mineral oil. So what we do now is we take a container, preferably an empty bottle, such as this one, and we go ahead and first of all, let's move this over here so we can see better. We're going to take the mineral oil, put it over here for a second, then we're going to take our empty bottle container, and then we're going to grab our good old varnish maker and painter's naphtha. Now, as we discussed in part 1, this is really the best solvent you can possibly use for making Whistle Mix and strobe mix. When you make these propellants, this is the specific solvent that really works best, especially at room temperature, where you don't have to heat it. And because our phlegmatizer, our stabilizer, is mineral oil, we don't have to heat it, and it really dissolves well in the naphtha, because the naphtha is really the most ideal solvent. And like we talked about before, Coleman Cam Fuel, so that or mineral spirits can also be used, and they're right up here with the naphtha, right up there in terms of compatibility. But naphtha is really the best. If you want the very best solvent for the job, then you go with Varnish Maker and Painter's naphtha. It can be any brand, but I like Clean Strip. Anyway, we have 600 grams that we're making. The rule of thumb is you want 15 grams or 15 milliliters for every 100 grams of propellant. So because we are doing a 600 gram batch, we need 90 milliliters, or in weight grams, of the solvent. So let's go ahead and begin adding it. Okay, so I've got 100, but that is not really, that big of an issue. As long as you're within 10, less or extra compared to what you're going for, it should be fine. But yeah, you generally want to aim for 15 milliliters of solvent for every 100 milliliters of total propellant that you're making. For every 100 grams of propellant that you are mixing, it's 15 grams or milliliters of solvent that you want. And that affords that you have the proper amount of solvent, and it's not too dry or too wet when you're mixing it. Anyway, now let's go ahead, put the scale over here. Add in the mineral oil. Wash out the cup a little bit. Very good. Solvent over here, put the calculator over here, put the brushes over here. Get a quick sip of ice cold beverage. Oh yes, fantastic. You gotta stay hydrated, ladies and gentlemen. Don't want to neglect that. Alright. Put this over here. Put you there. Now comes the part where we put our gloves on. It's time to get dirty. Alright, this is the fun part where we gotta begin mixing everything up. So now we're gonna contact the propellant. We're going to really get in there. So we will now put on our gloves. We didn't have to do that earlier because we weren't directly contacting the propellant. So we didn't have to goof off with putting the gloves on yet. But now we're ready to put the gloves on. So this is the mineral oil that has been dissolved very nicely in the Varnish Maker and Painter's naphtha. But first, before we add it to the propellant, what we're going to do is just kind of carefully and respectfully mix around what we have in the bowl already. So this is the perchlorate, with the sodium salicylate whistle fuel and the red iron oxide all together. So this is a live mix now. It is ready to go boom. So in this state, we want to make sure that we're away from all sources of potential combustion. We don't want to have sparks around us. We don't want to have flame around us. We don't want someone smoking near us. That's definitely something we have to be very mindful of. It is the fact we're now at the point where this is a live mix, and we got to make sure that there are no sources of combustion around us in order to ensure safety. So what Caleb shows in his video of making sodium salicylate whistle mix is he'll screen it, and he'll screen it dry. I found that you don't have to do that. You don't have to screen it dry if you just sort of mix it around a bit like this carefully with a gloved hand. And this is also much less friction. You're introducing much less friction compared to if you are screening it dry a few times first. And this also saves time because you're not spending maybe 10 minutes screening it until it is extremely well mixed, because that's actually not necessary to achieve very good performance. And with Firesmith, he'll do the Beggy method, and the Beggy method it doesn't really result in an extremely homogeneous mixture until you screen it, like he says, about half a dozen times, and that is kind of tedious, and you don't have to do that. If you follow my method that I'm illustrating here to a T, you will only have to screen it once, and that's for the granulation part, the granulation step, and you just screen it once, and you're done. Anyway, we will now add the mineral oil that is dissolved in the naphtha. Okay, it's all been added. And I tell you what, I don't think there'd be a problem with moving you a bit closer here. So you can get a closer look at what's going down now. So the trick is in order to avoid all those extra screening procedures, you just mix it good enough the first time in the bowl, now that solvent's been added at this point, at this step. As you mix it and you knead this powdery dough, you will mix the potassium perchlorate and the catalyzed fuel good enough in a faster amount of time than if you have to screen it a bunch of times. So what you do is you just mix it with your hand and focus on getting all of those little pieces of potassium perchlorate that aren't fully integrated. You focus on seeking them out and crushing them and smushing them with your gloved hand, and it really works out nice. And before you know it, you have a propellant composition that is as homogeneous and well mixed as one that you screen a bunch of times before it is complete. Because what's nice about this method is it's ready to dry, and it's ready to let sit on your drying sheet after the first granulation. You're not granulating it more than once, and you have a nice high density product at the end after granulated, and it's a nice consistent size, and you don't have more of like a fine or powdery can still be dusty kind of propellant at the end, compared to if you have to granulate it a bunch of times, because the more times you granulate it through the screen again and again, the finer and finer it will be. With this method, you granulate it just once, and the individual pieces are about maybe a third to half the size of a rice grain, and they don't get the majority of them aren't smaller to down to a finer powder, compared to if you granulate it a bunch of times and you really get the particle size finer and finer each time you do that, just to get a really homogeneous mix. But anyway, it's just been a few minutes, and as we can see, all of the white potassium perchlorate granules are essentially all gone. Like, there's just a couple here and there, and the propellant as a whole now is like very well mixed, and that's great. That's what we want to see, because the whole point of doing things this way is to get extremely high performance, reliable whistle mix in one afternoon. Like, get this done within a 2-hour period, like less than 2 hours. If you have everything you need and you're ready to go, you can go from the very start to having it already granulated and drying, within the time span of realistically just like an hour and 30 minutes. And then the drying time is going to be overnight in a nice dry spot inside in a low humidity room, and you will be good to go. It'll be ready to press the next day, and it'll make extremely awesome whistle rockets and very high performing strobe rockets, because you need, of course, whistle at the lifting stage of a strobe rocket and also the delay stage. Okay, so now let's go ahead and check out the granulation process. So what we do is we'll take about a fistful of propellant. We have a 10 mesh smaller screen here. It's faster if you have a larger screen, but we're using the smaller screen today to show that you can still get it done pretty quick with the smaller screen. So you take the propellant, and you just carefully granulate it through the screen and try and evenly distribute it each time you add a piece of propellant to granulate through. You want to try and evenly distribute it across the drying paper. So in this case, I'm using a length of waxed paper, but you can also use craft paper just fine for the application. Oh man, it's very hot out here. Very hot day. It's been very hot everywhere lately in the United States, but yeah, even in the northern states, it's getting quite warm. So it's nice that I have this fan next to me to at least attempt to keep me a little cooler. But as you can see, this red iron oxide Sally whistle mix, it really looks quite nice. It's very pretty, and it functions, performs just as well as it looks. Very, very good performance. And in order to ensure that, you got to make sure that sodium salicylate is of good quality, and you also have to ensure that your potassium perchlorate is of good quality. So make sure you're getting it from a good supplier that isn't cutting corners on quality. Because when it comes to the chemicals that are used in the pyrotechnics trade, you can run into problems if your chemicals aren't of sufficient quality for a given application. Well, thankfully, in today's case, we are using some good quality chemicals that are going to be fine for the job. So we're about 3/4 of the way done with the granulation process. Want to make sure that we start out to try and get things as evenly distributed on the drying paper as possible. And if there's some areas where there's a little bit more and some areas where there's a little bit less, we can easily smooth that over when we're done granulating. So I'm going to go and move over to the other side because I realized that there is more room to add a little bit more over here. So that is what I shall do now. There's a pontoon plane flying over. He's going a little bit lower, so that's why he's louder. Okay. Right now there's enough left that we can just empty it into the granulation screen. All right, well, that's about it. I'll now take, this little brush will actually work. And I'll kind of smooth out some areas that I can tell need a little help to be more even. Yeah, and that'll be good. So now it is ready to let dry. This is that 600-gram batch. It takes up quite a bit of our workspace, but a kilogram batch, in that case, we would just extend the length of the drying paper to accommodate that. But anyway, that is the end of the beginning to end procedure of making this high performance sodium salicylate whistle mix. So next we'll let it dry, and then we'll bring it in, let it dry for the remainder of its drying time, and then we're going to test it out and then press a rocket with it, and it should perform really good. So in the next upload we're going to talk about strobe propellant. So see you then. Thanks for watching.